going to go ahead and apologize for the technical difficulties that we had. We couldn't get the projector to work, so while there would have been a PowerPoint with video, that's not happening. Thank you for coming. Today we'll be talking about Catholicism and anime. The plan is that first I'm going to give you a little bit of background information about myself and then an overview of what the project was, some historical background as far as Christianity in Japan goes, and then we'll start talking about why I chose Catholicism specifically and then the anime titles that I selected to analyze. This will be easier. This topic started out as an independent research paper that I wanted to do in my senior year of college at Agnes Scott College. I'm a film studies minor because they don't have a film studies major yet or any other kind of film major, so I did theater with a film studies minor. And it's a very small program. Only one faculty member and a small handful of students. Pretty much everyone in the program knew who everyone else was, even if they weren't really friends with them. I was also president of the school's anime club at the time, and I had started the process of getting confirmed in the Catholic Church. So in combination with starting the project, really entrenched in the anime community at the school and getting confirmed so I could fact check things easily. It worked out really well. And I needed some class credits, and it was a topic I became pretty interested in, specifically because of Blue Exorcist and Trigun. So I filled out the paperwork for having an independent study class, selected my faculty member, advisor, and then did the work at my own pace/schedule and turned the paper in by finals week. So there was a deadline. I didn't get to everything that I wanted to look at, and it's really just scratching the surface of a much bigger topic. So this is more of a tiny little introduction and overview. And I didn't get to explore as much as I had wanted, because 5 months. But if I do continue with film studies for like grad school, this would be a topic that I would like to investigate further, and so there might be more of this to come. It depends on what my final decisions are, because adult decisions. Due to the time limit I had and other commitments, I hadn't been able to include all the titles I wanted to include. So Death Note, Chrono Crusade, and Ghost 07 were set aside in favor of Blue Exorcist, Trigun, Trinity Blood, and Hellsing. But I still think the information I have for you today is valuable. Before this project, I didn't know many of the things about Christianity in Japan that I do now, and I think it's an important historical fact to keep in mind when you're watching anime and see a character that identifies as Christian, because there's that historical context that really is not the same as it is here. No, it's not. And if I had a PowerPoint, this would be where we'd change slides. When we think of Christianity being brought to Japan, what comes to mind? You, or I did, think of the Meiji Restoration and the intense westernization of Japan that occurred, right? That's what I thought at first too, but it actually was first brought over by the Portuguese in the 1500s. The Portuguese brought Catholic missionaries over when they visited Japan, and there was an exchange of ideas and thought for business. The shogun commanded that his community should convert to the new religion in exchange for trade, because if you convert, supposedly it's easier to trade. I'll take questions later if that's okay.
I just want to know if you want what's the help with the projector I can give your hands?
The computer's putting the output, but the projector is not picking up the output, so I'm just not going to bother with it right now.
Just wondering, the projector's probably burnt out.
I'm just not going to bother with it right now. I'm going to keep talking. Where was I? Right. The missionaries were rather wary of the motivations behind the agreements to baptism, but ultimately they made the decision of baptize now, educate later. Because when you're Catholic, it's this long process and takes forever. And just being confirmed when you've had the baptism and the communion takes a year. And you have to do all the classes and all that stuff. So, yeah, takes a long time. However, by the 1550s, suspicions and distrust towards the missionaries and foreigners in general started to build. When the Japanese started to be outwardly hostile towards the missionaries, the Portuguese fled, leaving the Japanese people who genuinely felt like they had found a new religion that they liked on their own, by themselves. Whoops. Before the Portuguese fled, they had trained some of the native Japanese what they need to know in order to continue their worship. From that point on until the Meiji Restoration, Catholicism was taught by Japanese to Japanese and was practiced in secret to avoid persecution. It was very dangerous to be Catholic in Japan for a long while. As a result of this involuntary breaking off with the church officials, Christian denominations that you can only see in Japan were created, combining Japanese culture with Catholic doctrine and evolving from that point on. So there's like these really cool cults, not cults, but it's not a cult, cult's a bad word. Sect, that's a much better word. All Christian sects that sound really, really cool and interesting, and unfortunately I didn't get to read up on them as much as I had wanted to, but they sound really cool. Missionary work began once again during the Meiji Restoration. By the 1980s, 2% of Japan considered themselves Christian and 12% considered themselves Christian-friendly. What being Christian-friendly means, the book I got this statistic from didn't really say. So that could mean anything. And I don't have more recent numbers. Okay. This would be when we switch to a different slide. The anime, how do you tell it's Catholic? The big thing with knowing that what I was watching was Catholicism and not some generic Christian doctrine they threw in is that they often very specifically point out that the Christian character is a Catholic priest or the entire Vatican is involved somehow. That's a pretty big indication that Catholic, yes. Not generic. In Sailor Moon, Sailor Mars attends a private Catholic school, half of Trinity Blood, works in the Vatican. Hellsing is the only anime that I've currently seen that actually has Protestant characters specifically pointed out. Though Trigun does not actually specify what denomination Wolfwood belongs to, in the anime at least. In the manga, he's part of the Eye of Michael, which is some sort of Christian plant-worshipping hybrid thing. I'm not all that clear on the details. More often than not, the characters, if they're Christian, are Catholic. Even the creator of Trigun is Catholic. In the case of Death Note, Christian symbolism was used simply because it looked pretty. The artists believed that they could do something with the Christian imagery they thought was there and ran with it, while the writer was all, I have no idea where you got that, but okay, who cares? But for the most part, it is there on purpose, but usually serves no greater purpose for the narrative outside of rule of cool, much like how we treat Eastern religions and Western media. So, two-way street. Okay, now for the good part, the anime! I ended up picking the 4 titles that I did because I felt like they showed a wide range of opinion of who Catholics are, 3 from a non-Christian perspective and 1 from a Catholic perspective. Hellsing is on one extreme, the Catholics are evil end, and Trigun is on the other with a main character who aspires to be the Catholic ideal, or ideal Catholic, and inspires others to do the same, despite how the world around them makes it sound like a completely stupid idea. The 2 in the middle are Trinity Blood and Blue Exorcist, with Trinity Blood leaning towards Hellsing sensibilities and Blue Exorcist leaning towards Triguns. And no, the 2 vampire anime are not on one end of the argument just because they're both vampires. Well, while I picked these titles out specifically because of how well known they were, I would be showing videos of each one just so everyone had an idea of what they were about, but we don't have the projector. So, who here knows the plot of Hellsing? A lot of you. Trinity Blood. Less of you. Blue Exorcist. Even less of you. And Trigun. Yay! Okay, so I'll summarize them before I go any further. Hellsing is about a cop who gets turned into a vampire by a vampire called Alucard, and this is the original anime. I actually haven't watched the OVAs, so this is original anime only. So cop gets turned by Alucard, who's Dracula backwards. And Alucard works for a Protestant military organization because he serves Integra. He serves Integra, and she's very anti-vampire and wants to kill like all the vampires, and Alucard helps with that somewhat. And they're apparently enemies of the Catholic Church, even though the Catholics also want to kill all the vampires, but instead of working with vampires to get to that end, they turn themselves into superhuman biology experiments, where they have vampire-like powers, but aren't vampires, and there's a lot of, "You hypocrite!" yelling in that. If I explain Hellsing anymore, I think I might spoil the ending in case you haven't watched it, so that's where that summary ends. Trinity Blood is confusing. As the anime, at least. I haven't read the manga or the light novels, but I think they're also confusing. So I don't actually know what to say about Trinity Blood outside the fact that it's about a vampire that eats other vampires, and he works for the Vatican, and yeah. Okay, so, and Blue Exorcist is about Rin Okumura, who has a twin brother named Yukio, and Rin finds out on the verge of becoming a high school student, or that age range, that he's the son of Satan. and now he has powers because he's hit a certain age, and Satan wants to take him to hell so he can be Prince of Hell. But he doesn't want to do that, and some people die, and then he decides to become an exorcist so he can kill Satan. And then he makes friends at the exorcist school. And bad things happen. Yay! And Trigun is my favorite. And it takes place in the future, in space, on a different planet. And the short summary is that it's about 2 insurance agents who follow around the humanoid typhoon, Bash and Stampede, so they can make sure that insurance stuff doesn't get messed up. But then you add some psycho killers and the fact that there's a bounty on his head, and and all crazy stuff happens. And it's really fun and happy until the middle, and then it's really sad. Okay, so that's what they're about. This is the part where we get more narrative analysis and less facts and historical tidbits. Trigun, Hellsing, and Trinity Blood are anime that are still within the 90s, early 2000s range, with the Trigun anime having come out in 2003, while the manga was created in the 90s. Blue Exorcist is the most recent, having come out within the last few years. It's not Naruto popular, but it has a decently sized fan base. I'd say Trinity Blood has the smallest fan base out of all these. It's simply because I've only felt their presence online when I purposely go searching for Trinity Blood related things instead of simply going to an anime convention or going onto a generic anime forum. And I noticed the other three, but not really Trinity Blood. So, basing popularity stats on that.
Those costumes are also very hard to make.
That too.
I tried being Asta on Friday. It was very hot in there.
Oh dear.
And yeah, no, never again, not in May. It's too heavy.
Maybe winter.
Maybe.
Even if you don't know what Trigun and Hellsing are, you can recognize the characters on the manga volumes and when people cosplay them due to their popularity and how iconic guy in red coat with awesome gun is. There's a lot of those. Okay, so Hellsing! I only watched the original first series of Hellsing, so what happens in the OVAs, I'm unaware of what that is, so we're not going to be talking about it, because I won't talk about something that I don't know or understand. Makes sense. If I do continue to pursue the topic, I probably will look at them eventually, but that's not today. What I did notice was that in the anime, there's only really 2 episodes that have Catholic characters in them at all, and it's one is a recurring character, and he's a Catholic priest, and there's another character who shows up, and I think he's an archbishop or something like that. He's the priest's higher up, regardless. And it's very interesting that in the dub they give the Catholic priest a Scottish accent. So not only does the artwork indicate that he's evil with the glasses and the shining over the glasses like they always do for the evil characters, then he has a Scottish accent, so he looks like a very scary Scotsman. And it's kind of amusing. But in the 2 episodes that this character, who is really all that noticeable, he's special because he actually can give Alucard a decent fight. He's not weak or anything. He actually is a formidable opponent, but it is established that he's a bit of a hypocrite because he's special powers due to science that are very similar to vampire special abilities, and so he basically turns himself less human in order to kill things that aren't human. And Alucard is all, haha, you suck. But they're enemies of the Protestant organization, which makes sense. Catholics and Protestants historically had not gotten along. People leaving is very discouraging.
Boo.
Goodbye. But yeah, while they are enemies, they're not like the big bad of the series. So it's like that antagonist that's there for filler almost. It's kind of weird. And then they don't actually tell you who the main antagonist was anyway in that anime. So it's like, we don't know who that was. Okay. So really the only identifiable antagonists are the Catholic characters, even though they're not the big bad, which is a little confusing. And the other one character that is the Catholic priest higher up, his conversation with Integra, while Integra isn't exactly a nice person, he was very rude and a little disgusting. So it's like, I don't like you. Be nice to her. Even though she's not being nice to you, but she's awesome, so there. Favorite character alert. So, Helsing is pretty open about how it feels about the Catholic characters, and there's not really much else to say about it other than what I just said. Now, how that transitions into Trinity Blood is interesting, because Trinity Blood, it does want you to like these characters. It wants you to like these Vatican characters, and they have some evil Vatican and some good Vatican. But the good Vatican characters are actually where the criticism of mine comes from. Because the first 3 episodes of Trinity Blood, you're introduced to Abel Night Road, and you see that he's a vampire who eats vampires, and he has no qualms about eating vampires because vampires are evil, and that's his food source. But at some point, the anime does like a 180, and suddenly he has problems with eating vampires, and supposedly it has something to do with being a priest, but he was still a priest in the first 3 episodes. So where was the worry and concern over the value of life and stuff like that earlier? And why is it all of a sudden important now? And it just seems like such a 180 and a mood whiplash, and no real explanation within the episodes, where it's kind of all, why are you a hypocrite? And I can't see the similarities between Abel and Vash, but Trigun does such a better job at showing why Vash doesn't like hurting people and stuff like that, and is very consistent with that, that Abel just kind of feels like a weird imitation of Vash, and he's not as good. And then you have nuns who are wanting to kill people, and then you have assassins who are priests, and priest assassins who are actually in jail, but then taken out of jail so they can kill other people. And it's like, where's the whole thou shalt not kill stuff? That's kind of important.
That went out when the vampire showed up.
Yeah.
Out the door.
And
well, they're undead. It doesn't count.
They're not dead. They're not dead. It's nanotechnology from Mars.
Trinity
And
vampires are weird.
Someone just
And-
needs to call D and handle all of it.
And then there's the one kill that was of that really bad vampires who killed the one non-lady person, and then he's really cut up over that, but it's like, you didn't have any problem killing those other vampires earlier. What's the difference? This one was actually evil. And there's so much stuff that really could have been avoided in that anime, where it's like, you're hypocritical Catholics, and you're incompetent. That's nice. The Vatican can't do. Expletive. So, yeah. That's the problems with Trinity Blood. They're nice, they're just not good at their jobs. Okay, so we'll move on to Blue Exorcist, where more nice Catholics, yay! And good at jobs, yay! And have friends with non-Catholics and are happy about it, yay! What really stood out to me, especially when I was reading the manga of Blue Exorcist, because I actually read the manga before I even started doing the project, and it was the manga that kind of made me curious to explore the topic a bit more in Blue Exorcist, was that in the anime, Rin and Yukio are actually the only Catholic kids their own age in this exorcist school, even though the school belongs to the Catholic Church, sort of. It's a little confusing as to what belongs to who, because Mephisto kind of plays everybody, but is not part of the Vatican, but works with the Vatican, and he's a demon, and yeah, he's trained exorcist, so it's like, I don't know what's up with you, but okay. He's fun. But the Rin and Yukio are the only 2 Catholic kids in the exorcist school, and they look like a combination of Shinto and Buddhist, with 3 of them definitely Buddhist, 1 of them is definitely Shinto, and I don't know what Shiami is, but she's cute and adorable and sweet. Wears a kimono all the time until we get her a school uniform. Maybe the kimono could tell me if I knew more about Japanese culture, I don't know. But they're these teenagers were all different religious backgrounds, and if you read the manga, you know that at least 3 of them were raised in an environment that was actually very suspicious of Catholics, because Bon's father was a high priest for a Buddhist temple, and he got a lot of flack for working with Father Fujimoto back when all the kids were like really little, and yeah. So it's actually very interesting to see that some of these kids have grown up in anti-Christian environment and yet are still willing to be friends with these 2 Catholic characters and are actually very good friends with them, and their friendship is very important to them, and it's very cute and sweet, and I love it. So I like the fostering the friendships interreligiously that Blue Exorcist has in it. And while I haven't found official statements from the creator or anything, I think that was definitely on purpose. There are a few things with the anime where it's all, that's not how that works. The Pope, I don't think, has an army. I think
That you know of.
He does have the Swiss Guard. They have technically special forces.
Do they have giant rocket bombs?
They should. They should.
They're that powerful.
Okay, but it's like
Classified. There we go.
it's like you can't actually take over the Pope position. There's all these rules and things. It's like people would have alerted somebody, and then this would have been squashed or something, unless maybe it's a comment on the corruption in the church, maybe. But it's like, I'm pretty sure that wouldn't have happened, but okay. So there's some factual stuff that's kind of off, but in terms of that actual characterization and how the characters are portrayed, everyone's nice and loving and everything's wonderful, and then there's the occasional jerk. And then there's Shura, who actually doesn't have any religious affiliation, even though she's an exorcist and works for the Vatican. She's actually rather adamant about the fact that she does not believe in God. So that was interesting. But moving on, because I have a lot to say about Trigun. Because Trigun's my favorite, and the more you know about the Catholic religion, the more symbolic stuff you pick up on as you rewatch the series over and over and over. And there's just so much stuff that I honestly could talk about Trigun forever. But I won't, because I only have an hour. Well, 30 minutes now. Okay, so Trigun starts out as kind of your typical, well, not typical because the setting's so strange, because it's a Western, a sci-fi Western. Whee! But it's like, the hero comes in, saves the day, makes friends, something funny happens, etc., etc. But very quickly you start having all these discussions about morality and when is it ever okay to kill someone, basically, because everyone has guns on this planet. It's like Texas or something.
Texas forever.
In Arizona. Yeah. But it's like, do you ever have the right to take another person's life? And Fascist Stampede, our main character, says, no, you never have that right. It's never okay. There's always another way. And everyone else is all, you're crazy. But as the series goes on, you see time and time again that Bash finds a way to not kill anybody. And then the big bad the big bad and his minions show up, and then you're all, oh, you want to make him do that. Oh, this isn't going to end well. This is terrible. And they're mean. But I do like Legato and Knives. I like all of them. All the characters are lovely, even when they're evil and sadistic and crazy.
Lovely.
But there's always a time where Vash's values are being challenged, and a lot of what Vash's values are actually aligns very much up with what like the ideal Catholic is supposed to be like, especially when it comes to a really high moral thought stuff. It's not like the more, I'm not going to say superficial because other Catholics would get mad at me, but some things I would say are definitely more important than others. So it's like Vash has all these values that are like the really important stuff, and they don't really discuss the not so important stuff. Like examples are escaping me, but Vash always helps people who are in need. He does his best not to kill anybody. He goes out of his way to help. He tries very hard to be a good person, and in the environment of Gunsmoke, that's very hard to do because there's not much water. There's people shooting everybody all the time, and it's an environment that's structured so that it's very easy to be amoral or have very shaky morals, or okay, this was okay this one time, but not really okay that other time. And it's sort of like, where do you really draw the line here in order to survive and make sure you live to see the next day? And but even aside from that, Vash the Stampede very much is a Christ figure. And it's kind of interesting when you bring the evil twin brother into it, because it's like, does that make this character the Antichrist? Is this Lucifer? It's like, what's going on with that? And then it's like, wait, these two are a virgin birth, literally. Well, arguably, if you start talking about genetics and stuff in the manga. But the anime, it's very easy to argue that they're a virgin birth. And then they have an adopted mother who very much fits into a similar, her love interest is dead, so there's no reason to add sexuality to her character, especially since she doesn't have another love interest. So not only are they kind of literally a virgin birth, they also have a mother figure who's rather virginal and caring, and Vash looks up to her so much that even if that looks up to her so much, almost, or at, sorry, she's definitely the Virgin Mary figure of the story, is what I'm trying to say. Which kind of makes it awkward when they compare Vash's love interest to her in the second to last episode, but let's not talk about that. That is shush. And then you have Wolfwood, who kind of is the Judas of the story, because when they meet, Wolfwood knows that, spoilers, Wolfwood knows that he is supposed to kill this man. That's what Wolfwood's storyline is building up to from the moment that they meet, especially in the manga. It's kind of arguable in the anime, but in the manga, when they meet, he knows he's supposed to kill Vash. And it's sort of a callback to when Jesus prophesizes that one of the 12 will betray him, and Judas already knows that he is, because he was already talking about the people about how much would that cost. And then with the Millie and Meryl, I'm not sure which one would be which, or if they're both Mary Magdalene, but they definitely fill into the Mary Magdalene role in that they're always the first ones to be there when Vash is doing something really impressive or comes back or stuff like that. And that's significant because Mary Magdalene and another Mary were the first ones to notice that Jesus wasn't in his grave anymore. So the fact that there's two women following Vash around is significant because it was really always women who were always there for Jesus when all the men left and went about their daily lives after crucifixion and rejected his, what's the word?
Ostracization.
Yeah, that. And there's actually so much stuff that if I forget anything to say here, you can look on the blog that I have. There's a business card here with the address on it, and you can read the blog posts that I was writing as I was rewatching the series and would write posts about little things that stood out to me. Like there's even a case of arguable demonic possession in Trigun, and that was really cool to me because that's kind of a big thing when you're Catholic. You believe in that stuff. And there's just so much with Trigun, and I probably haven't even noticed all of it yet, or forgot to talk about it, or something like that. That it is very obvious that it was written after he converted, and the creator converted, and had all these thoughts and ideas still rolling around in his head, and it's like he created Trigun to kind of rationally talk to himself about the religion he just converted to, which is really cool because you kind of can't stop thinking about it once you've made the decision to be Catholic. You have to, if you're going to be a rational person, because reason is still important, because it's not that reason is divorced from faith. It's supposed to go together. So you have to reasonably have faith in things. It's like, so where do you draw this reason line? So it's very interesting to read and watch it from that point of view. And that's all I have in my notes right now. So if anyone has questions that hopefully I could actually answer, we can ask those now. Yes?
I was wondering if maybe you could expound on the connection between Catholicism and vampires. Because, I hadn't seen the anime you were talking about, but I did find that really interesting. Yeah.
Okay, well, the whole vampire connection to Catholicism honestly goes back to like the origins of vampires, because there obviously is a symbolic connection because vampires literally drink blood, and Catholics.
You're not supposed to know that.
And the communion wine is, we believe that it is literally transformed into the blood of Jesus when you do the ceremony thing. It's not blood until the ceremony, you have to understand. It's just wine, and then the ceremony happens in church by the priest with a special thing in Latin, and then it's blood and body. It's not the body without the ceremony thing.
Transfiguration.
Yes.
Hey.
So there's that connection because blood, and you could probably argue something about the undead factor because in Catholicism we do believe that after the apocalypse everyone is risen like Jesus was in their perfect body form thing. And you could argue that any undead creature could potentially be connected to that. Like I have a theory about zombies, to be honest. I thought that's a criticism, but I need to do research first.
You're making zombies too complicated.
Shush. Okay, there was one question over here.
Oh, what about Black Butler? They show parts of the characters going to church and they were fighting an angel that was evil.
I'd have to rewatch Black Butler in order to talk about that extensively, but yeah, there was Angela and Ash, but I'll look into that. And do you have one?
A lot of the relationship between Catholicism and vampires comes way before anime and manga.
Mm-hmm.
Has a lot to do with the fact that the priests both conducted and were caretakers of the cemeteries. And the origins of vampirism, or the origins of the myth of vampirism, come from the fact that as the body begins to decay, the flesh on the fingers pulls back and it looks like the nails are still growing. The nails aren't actually still growing, it gives the appearance that they're still growing. As the fingers shrink on the underside and the nail bed pulls back, it looks like the fingernails are growing. It looks like they continue to have fingernails and toenails growing. Additionally, corpses, as things start to decay inside, blood comes out the mouth. So it looks like if you go in and you dig up a body, because quite often you might have to move caskets, reuse caskets, or in certain Catholic areas, move bodies to catacombs. When they would have to dig them back up, there would be blood on the lips of corpses. And some corpses didn't decay much and looked beautiful, and the skin had a waxy appearance. Blood on the lips, long fingernails, long hair, long toenails, and that was where the beginning of the mythos of vampirism came in Europe. But it was the Catholic priests and the Catholic, the acolytes, the people who were actually involved in the cemeteries that discovered these things. So it's actually a long history of the relation between vampires and
Vampire
Catholics.
101, everybody.
Well, to add to that, because that is correct also, is basically the absorption of a lot of the mythos. And this even begins right at the beginning of the Catholic Church, where, I mean, it's the reason we really have Christmas. We're trying to appeal to all these pagan religions.
Mm-hmm.
Let's Christianize and absorb them into our own. Vampire myths have existed since the beginning of time. I'm waiting when they find the caveman drawings of vampires. Because it's almost that old. I will shoot somebody. But you have all these, especially in Eastern Europe, and I know that it's not so much with that Eastern Europe's that gray area where Eastern Orthodox and Catholic kind of meet, but it's one of those things of, here's all these vampire myths. That's the reason the cross and holy water, that becomes a part of the vampire mythos, is because the Catholic Church basically goes in. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. And...
Do you want the microphone?
No, I'm good. Mm-hmm. And they incorporate the vampire myth and make it their own, and of course add the Christians into it, because obviously we're going to have power over this because our symbols have power.
Oh, so that's why the water.
That's one of those things. That's not an original thing. It's during the absorption of the mythos that already exists. Because, like I said, without the sparkles, I'm waiting for that caveman vampire drawing to be found in
There
my
actually
lifetime.
is something in that it's evolving in the mythos. In modern paranormal, now there is the whole effect of that the symbolism doesn't work if the vampire didn't believe. They're only burned by the cross or burned by the holy water if they believed when they were alive.
Or
If they didn't
believe
believe or were not Christian, then you have to find their symbol. Like, for instance, if you had a Hindu that was made into a vampire, you would have to find their own symbol that they believed in order to burn them.
That is
And then there's the
fantastic.
converse of that, where if you have faith in your symbol, your symbol has power regardless.
That too.
Yeah, and I was talking to some coworkers recently about this. The term vampire didn't show up until the 1500s, somewhere in there.
Vampire.
Before that, there was a general classification for all undead called revenant, and that goes back into way back in history. And then you start seeing some breaking up into the different types, the zombies, the vampires, and that type of thing after that.
Okay, stuff I didn't know before. Yay! Round of applause. Okay, and we have 15 minutes, so if anyone else has any questions. Yes.
Okay, so there are some more obvious signs of Catholicism in anime. I mean, clearly, if you see the Vatican, that's probably going to be Catholic. But what are some more subtle signs that you've noticed?
A more subtle sign that could be linked to Catholicism because could potentially be mother figures who really don't have. I mean, it could be for other reasons, obviously, but if you're already picking up on more subtle, if you're picking up on if you're already picking up on other Christian stuff, like maybe it's the setting is very Western, or like Full Metal Alchemist actually comes to mind, but if there's enough hints that it's a more Western setting or a more Western influence, then it's very possible that a mother figure that is not sexualized or is single, there's no father figure, it's very possible that could be a Virgin Mary character-ish type thing. And also there's threes, or because the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit stuff. So if there's three, and especially if the character has like three different manifestations of itself, but they're all still the same person, like in Silent Hill with Heather Mason. Yeah. There's the mother, the daughter, and the memory, and they're all the same person, but they're three or more different manifestations of the same person. So that's well, and Silent Hill was originally created by a Japanese game company, so that is Japanese, so that counts.
That also brings in what he was talking about incorporating. There actually is an earlier 3, and that is where it comes in with the Cult of Mary as well, the Mother Maiden Crone. And when you have female characters that are in 3, it may be leaning towards the Mother Maiden Crone, and that's seen a lot in some of the more elaborate movies, where the woman goes through, she starts out as the maiden, something happens, she's no longer pure, she matures into the mother role, and then later has to become the teacher or the crone. And it's seen a lot, and that actually is a pagan symbol.
Okay. We did borrow from pagans, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, there's a question in the way back.
So another sign that may be Catholicism is the abundance or appearance of nuns or nunnery.
Yes, nuns. Yes.
Catholic schools for girls.
Yes. Do you have a question, Rachel?
No, I'm just adding to. Yeah, use my name. Why don't you?
I know your name.
Just adding to the list of other things that are can tip you off. The use of specific Catholic symbols like the rosary.
Yeah. There's a Japanese drama where this one character is sort of pretending to be Catholic, and he does the forehead, chest cross thing, but he does it backwards. It's kind of hilarious, even if it's like, don't do that. Please don't do that. But
That would be from seeing it on camera.
Yeah. It would be.
Yeah, because he doesn't actually know.
Yeah. And also there's like a Last Supper type thing that could potentially be calling back to the Last Supper in the Bible. Which is, if you go to communion, you're always reminded of that because they tell the story every time you go to communion. So you never forget where it came from. And it's almost 3:20.
I have one thing, and I know it's you said it all the way in the bed. I found it. Yeah, God, my tongue. It's been a long con.
Yeah.
I found it interesting at the beginning we were going over the history about how in Japan that if you go there, and the Catholics are a different sects. They have somewhat been Japanese, whatever we'll call it that way. Because I'm actually Puerto Rican, and you see that exactly same thing in the Caribbean. Each island, I believe it's called folk Catholicism, And I think it's interesting that they did the exact same thing that everybody else did.
Yeah, there's a little bit of it in Mexico too. Like
It
a little
is,
bit.
but if you want one that's almost 50-50, booty.
Yes. Okay, there's another question too. Well, one of you decide who's going first. Okay, one with the hat.
Okay. Well, it's just something I've noticed also is that there's probably a lot of Catholic influence just in the style of like knights. Like for instance, in Sword Art Online, I feel like that red and white armor
They look
guy
like
is
Templars.
like a knight Templar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a possibility. And I don't have my glasses on, so I can't really see who else raised their hand, but
Based off the anime I've seen, and one of my favorite series, Certain Magical Index, a lot of Catholicism in anime seems to be not between Catholics and non-Catholics, but Catholics and science particularly, attacking the things that question the beliefs laid out in the Bible and the Old Testament and such. I was wondering if you pick up on any other obscure anime like that, or maybe just like they draw this light, hey, Catholicism, and any like.
I've only seen one episode of Certain Magical Index, but now that you brought that up, that makes me really want to watch it, the rest of it.
It's a common theme, Catholicism versus
Yeah.
science.
It really is.
Stupid gal,
But I can't think of any anime titles off the top of my head. Thank you. What was I going to say? Yes.
And then I also like certain animes, like one you mentioned earlier, 07 Ghost, and then there's other ones like Kamikaze Kaito-Jin and a bunch of other ones where they blatantly use like religious stories and symbols to carry their plot around, especially when they're just focusing on trying to expound like the devil from people and using different ways of doing it and going back to different sources and religions and stuff. Because it's really cool to see the different ways they try and twist that around for their different plots, and they do it subtly as well. And like for Kamikaze Kaito-Jin, they go back to the story, they even manipulate it to where they do it correctly, and it's interesting. And then 07 Ghost is really cool how they do baptism and they have the bishops and everything to have that.
Okay, is that all for the questions? We have like 7 minutes left, but we can end early if we want to.
I just want to echo that to our Magical Index or Certain Magical Index, that is the show personally that I use as a touchstone for how is it that Japanese people view the, well, at least well, okay, let me backtrack, not Japanese people, but rather how is one way in which a conflict between Protestants and Catholics, which doesn't really exist as much in our minds as in some of their minds, and part of that I think is just influenced by historical antecedents of Protestant and Catholic conflicts that were more happened like the 16th century in Japan when they were trying to fight for converts and the like. So I don't know. To me, Magical Index kind of is an echo of this perception that, you know, and I'm not trying to say that Japanese people haven't met Protestants and Catholics in the 20th and 21st centuries, but I suppose it's sort of a convenient cultural shorthand that they're trying to use to help themselves tell a story by referencing a history of conflict that might be more potent in their minds than it might be in our minds.
Okay. Okay, so I guess we're done. I do want Millie's photograph before we leave because Trigun. And yeah, I think we're done.